Welcome back to Cosmic Brilliance and to our returning brilliant guest, Apollymi Mandylion, who is here to discuss a timely topic that is close to her heart. As you know from our previous shows together, she has the sad and tough job of being an apocalypse being when experimental worlds or timelines go too dark or do not succeed. This is just me, I personally believe we will succeed. And so our show today is focused on redemption, reformation, rehabilitation, and amnesty required for all of us right now. We are in a time of, shall I say, coming clean opportunities where all of us, as well as behind the scenes, darker military, corporate run space programs, and warriors, will be asked to be held accountable. The more initially innocent and naive warrior recruits that have not been given full disclosure as they move up the ladder of compartmentalized positions often will find themselves in doing a job that they can no longer live with or feel good about. Essentially blackmailed by compartmentalization by secret military corporations, both on Earth and off Earth. Many beings will be seeking amnesty and may serve both as informants and disinformants unknowingly. This will require solid evidence that has been collected in the present and in the future will be assisted by psionically advanced courts, psionic means psychic, to discern if there is true remorse, mind control, or lying in the person that is asking for amnesty. This time allows all of us for greater disclosure and enlightenment. Adyashanti, a profound spiritual teacher, said this about enlightenment. Quote, enlightenment is often a destructive process. It is the crumbling away of untruth. It is seeing through the facade of pretense and is the eradication of everything we imagined or were taught as true. End quote. So, for the sake of authenticity, I am highly suggesting all of us to reevaluate everything that we have been taught or told is true. It is very important to reclaim our power, not give it away, and self-determine what is authentic for us and what is not authentic any longer just because it's been a tradition or just because the parents do it that way, and also not in reaction to do the opposite. That is why we have Cosmic Brilliance shows, as well as a few other channels that also share non-infiltrated truths that will empower you and help you with your ascension enlightenment. So, Apollymi, I believe that you will not have to be the destroyer of this world this time around. In Hinduism, as an example, they name three divine forces carried out by three entities. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the sustainer, and Shiva is the destroyer and regenerator. So for me, Apollymi, you have the opportunity to not only take out the dark, but represent the Shiva aspect of regenerator and reformer, for which this show is focused on today. Your sincere, unselfish actions were demonstrated in the amazing story you shared at the end of our last show about the prison planet you bought, and after 5 years, managed a huge amount of large improvements as what I call a leader of reformation, not just a destroyer of worlds and timelines that have gone too corrupt. So those of you who have not listened to that last show with Apollymi, at the end especially, she shares a very inspiring rendition of how she turned around an entire planet in 5 years. So this is a gentle reminder that all our shows are built on one another without much repetition. Now, when we use the word Reformation, it's not a religious movement, okay? For you, Apollymi, it was applying what you learned, right, from your own life experience so far, and willingness to put into action combined with what you call common sense and a desire to improve society in a beneficial way for all beings while still requiring accountability. And leadership and maturity often require ongoing learning, not perfection. So we welcome you back, Apollymi, and thank you so much for being here for this interesting and very timely topic that is going public as we speak in terms of multiple court cases and things like that.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, this is a very, very sensitive subject for me to my heart. So I apologize for the tears.
Oh, okay. Let's start with the key elements that are missing in our society as the outworn dysfunctional systems disintegrate, making room for more creative and updated advancements. So, one of those advancements and encouragement for others, everyone, is to seek support. So, do you want to talk about that and any personal experience you wish to share around that?
So our society is so broken in the way that we treat people, in the way that we see people, and the way that we support people. We can all go out our front door and think to ourselves, do we really have a community that supports us? If our car breaks down on the side of the road, how many people are going to go by before someone stops to help? You know, it creates a very strong sense of insecurity, of untrust, and the feeling that we have to do everything on our own.
That's a good point.
So, yeah, and it needs to change. It has to change if even humans and non-humans, we all have to have a sense of security and trust in our environment and in our communities. So being able to be there for each other is so important. Whether you're a neighbor, whether you're a boss, whether you're a kid at school, we all live with and around each other, and we have to start realizing that our existence is our own, but we also influence everything around us.
That's true. It's very true. And not only influenced by the thoughts, right, but also by the words we use and how we talk about others. Is that your experience too?
Absolutely. Being able to understand the physics of nature itself, the way that we emotion, the way that we think, the way that we interact with people, it's all frequencies. And as we know, frequencies is the basic language of the universe. Our souls communicate with each other just talking to each other online, walking down the street. We're so consciously aware of everything, whether we know it or not. And so our thoughts, our emotions, and our feelings affect our environment, and it can either make or break a supporting system of our community. Um, as for personal experiences, everyone knows I've had a hard life. I'm not the only one. I know very few people on this planet that had a platinum spoon built into their mouth where they've had a family with a good paying job and the parents were loving and they were supported. 99% of us don't have that. All right. And it's up to us to change everything. So having the experiences that I have had being a super soldier, being part of the ET councils, going through all of my trials and tribulations, and trying to make a change on a prison planet that was a different prison planet, not this one, and seeing the changes in those last 5 years has been eye-opening completely because if a prison planet can change just from two people, me and my mate going in and buying the planet and changing all this stuff with compassion and understanding, I know that this planet can do it.
Well said, because a society that doesn't grow in the right directions for the benefit of all eventually perishes or is destroyed by resets.
Please don't make me do that. I don't want to,
Do that, folks. You know, we've had so many already.
right?
So,
But no, it's through history, time and time again, that if our society doesn't communicate and grow with each other, we're going to fail. You know, I'm in the same boat. I might have a slightly better paddle, but guess what? I have to row too. So,
yes. So to grow, I mean, what we're talking about today seems obvious, but it's obviously not because
this
we all need to remind ourselves. So to grow, it helps to have some kind of introspective process shared, like therapy or whatever. Would you agree with that?
absolutely, because again, our existence is all that we know. We can only, even for those who have osmosis, where you can walk up and touch people and get memories and get light language and feedback, we're still living in the moment of that memory, but it's still so short-lived. You really don't know the entirety of a person's experiences, their emotions, their thought processes on how they've had to take situations and grow or not grow, how they stunt their growth from it, because you're going to receive stuff, but you're not going to really you're going to have your own dialogue of everything of like what you should have done and everything. So it's about your ego versus the ego of your community versus the environment of your community. We have to have that understanding of ourselves, because like we all go through life having our own movie. We are the star of our own show. But we also have to remember that interacting with other people is interacting with another consciousness. So they're the star of their own show too. It's a place and a time. There is a place where you need to be the star of the show, of your own show, but there's a time where you need to learn to step back and understand that it's not all about you. And I'm still learning this, okay? Like everyone kind of puts me on a pedestal, but guys, I am not perfect, okay? I am still very much learning, just as everyone else. Just because I'm not human, we still go through the same retrospects of life, of learning how to be unselfish and learning how to share and learning how to be part of our community and learning how to obey certain rules and regulations and boundaries because it makes it for a safe environment. And my ears are going back right now because I had a lesson this week about this.
Do your ears go back when you're embarrassed?
Yeah, or like when I'm in trouble or I'm feeling guilty.
Yes.
So,
Just reminding folks she has two sets of ears.
yeah, I have the ones on my head, and then when I'm on base, I actually have a set of dragon ears on top. They're kind of more like horse shaped, but they do fan out. So I'm a freak of nature, but I love it. Our society needs to remind us at times that when we need to step back, because a lot of people can get on their high horse and, you know, do whatever they feel like they want to, but our community, our society helps make those boundaries and rules a safe place. We all you don't have to agree on everything, but there are certain things in a community that just you can't do. It makes it unsafe. It makes it either unethically moral or, certain things like walking into traffic without alerting anyone and wearing complete, black clothing and doing it at nighttime. there's rules and regulations for things for a reason. But and of course, people would get out of their cars and yell at this person, been like, "What are you doing? Did you forget the rules?" So it's important for our community to recheck our egos for us and step us back into line, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, you were bringing up rules, and let's take a back step a little bit. So, since we are moving, and as a culture, you're going to see more and more on media, all different kinds of media, of people up for trial, all kinds of things, exposure, things like that. So, a good place to start would be to refresh people with an understanding of the laws of this universal laws and then the laws of Earth, if you would be so kind to do that. Now, I know that in my last show with Dr. Amir Jangiri, he just kind of called off some really quick, like he said, okay, major no-nos or violations universally are stealing soul codes, which we
Mhm.
explained, destroying or sabotaging soul codes, invading free will, slavery, which takes some discussion, and messing with souls in general. So he briefly went through that. But would you agree with that? What is it that people need to know are real no-nos and there will eventually be consequence of?
Well, in some of our older episodes, I have gone over the rules of souls. You're not allowed to technically mess with any soul contracts. Like if you have a ordained place that you want to go after you die and you have made that soul contract for your soul to go to that place, no entity is allowed to come in and just take your soul. Like the minute you die, no one's allowed, like the dark forces aren't allowed to come in and put your soul in a soul jar or a soul trap or anything like that. That is disobeying karmatic laws. And so that is punishable by high demand. Um, so we've already gone through a lot of those, but the whole slavery thing, people have I'm not sure if people understand the terms of slavery on a universal law like understanding, because most people think of human slavery of like you come in and you take them and they're yours and you treat them however you want. Universal slavery is a yes and a no, but the principles are different. If a person tries to kill you, okay, or does anything to cause you extreme harm, like your soul coding or anything like that, you can choose to spare them of being completely punished by, karma. But it would be more of an indentured servant. Does that make sense? An indentured servant is someone who owes you a life debt, who it's you're sparing their life even though they tried to take yours, so therefore they have to give you their existence until they basically learn their lesson or that you feel like they've learned their lesson. So it's kind of straight up karma.
But
Uh,
but that would be in between lives after this life.
no, it could be this one as well.
You just say now I have the right karmically to have you as my slave or indentured servant.
Yes. And
That's
not a lot of people know about this law, but it's basically you still have to treat them as a human being or an entity of consciousness. You're not really allowed to just be like, you're not allowed to treat them like dirt. You're not allowed to, kill them or rape them or, do all these horrible things to them. Because what's happening is it is a straight up karmatic, it's a straight karma cash-in is basically what it is. Because they were going to kill you, you know, which is against one of the rules in certain things, and basically your soul. Like, say I walked down the street and this person made me upset, and instead of attacking their physical body, I was just going to attack their soul. Try to dismantle their soul coding or try to basically, steal their soul without whatever. The tides can be turned through that, and then now they would basically own me because I broke one of the universal laws. Does that make sense?
It does,
So,
but it's very advanced for where most people are hanging out in terms of
yes.
but it's still good to know. It's an interesting
Yeah.
kind of thing. It's a balancing act, and you also have to be, it also would mean you weren't killed, like they tried to kill you, right? So
Right. But the intention of messing with the soul coding and or trying to destroy that soul in general is the act because
that's
that
actually
takes
done a lot. That's
I
done.
know that takes away your free will to live because this is a free will universe, but it still goes against the non-free will act, which is part of Hanovian law, but it still qualifies here because it is one of the base laws of all universes of existence.
So basically, when uh okay, so the free will is really interesting, right? Free will and the 50% dark or 50% light and the neutrality game, which we discussed in previous shows. So, did the ones who we'll call the pirates, who let's talk about the ones that came in 250,000 years ago, and I found out they were actually invited in to up the ante. So, do they know were they told the universal laws? Or were they just like, woohoo, it doesn't matter. Like, does everyone in this game as souls know the universal laws? And then they just decide, okay,
No. For the species that came here through the rift, basically, where there was a lot of rifts that happened, and some of them got invited, some of them got thrown in. Like the Chakrel got thrown in. They had no idea they were even coming over here.
mhm,
Um they didn't they it wasn't like, oh hey, you're going to a different universe, we're gonna check you in, here's your guidebook. That never happened. They got thrown into a completely new situation with nothing, no understanding. Those who have joined the Universal Councils, however, generally have a decent understanding of most of the laws because some of the universe creators are part of that council. So the laws have been generally gone over, but there's a lot of loopholes in this universe, unfortunately. So, and they take advantage of it very well.
it's like this is why I'm asking specifically because the loopholes have been worked in and out. But so the ones that I will call invaded but were invited, it's a specific to a couple groups. They had the same test we did, which is coming in blind, most of us coming in blind, because this is a soul maturity test, kind of anything goes, maximum experiences, maximum challenges. So they weren't told either, even if they came from a higher dimension. So they came in and they're like, "Woohoo! Look at this. We can actually be, get away with a lot of things here," kind of thing.
It's like having a bunch of children who were born with families who have a lot of rules being left alone at a theme park where anything goes. You're like, oh, wait, I can do this and not get in trouble. They don't really know until they overhear or do it themselves and don't get punished, you know?
So, but also depending on the species, they don't have any internal compass as a soul to know like this is inappropriate behavior at all. It depends on their species and where they're from and how they look at us. So,
A lot of species have an internal compass. Many of them do. Even the dark ones that are, floating around now, they usually do. But again, it comes to our society. It comes to tradition. It comes to what's expected of us.
mhm. When you say what's expected of us, explain that a little bit more.
Well, if say every culture has different expectations of what's expected of their community and their people and their children. And that's pretty much the same terminology. Depending on what species that they're born in, whether it's good or bad, if a species starts to get corrupted things start changing, and then their expectations for the younger generation changes, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse. Even though that child might have a moral compass of not wanting to do that, it's what's expected of them and what the punishments are going to be, or, either exiled or killed or, receiving pain themselves. So it's the same principle, and it's unfortunate.
Especially the might makes right
Mhm.
groups and the bullying groups and the ones that, um, like you say, you'll be punished if you stand out or different. Uh, this is such a fascinating time right now. So, whew, okay. So we're going to be seeing a lot. We need to take accountability for our own actions. We've come pretty much full circle, and this is kind of the end of a huge game. And so I believe that not all the ones that played the dark role, but a lot of them know that their time is limited, so to speak. But the ones that are really strong won't allow themselves to feel that because they have denied fear. They don't admit it, and they're kind of like, we're going for broke, right? In a certain way. Is
Yep.
that pretty much it?
Hmm.
So, they've lost their moral compass. Now, you told me something very interesting about psychopaths that they're finding out because we probably have 10% psychopaths that are really extreme, and those will be a lot of them will be recycled back to source. But you were mentioning the DNA connection there.
Yeah, so there are studies out there that are, um, hang on. Sorry. There has been studies that have basically done DNA structure work on serial killers and certain psychopaths and stuff, and they found that it was actually genetic sequences within their DNA. So I can't, I used to raise lizards, you know, and when a lizard's temperature gets to a certain, you know, temperature, because the female temperature and the male temperature, just like chickens, have it messes with their hormones. But if you get one that's kind of in between, it genetically makes them psycho. Like they just can't control themselves. They're very aggressive. They're very violent. And humans are different, but it can change within the DNA to have these people come out and just be genetically created to be like this. Now, does the laws of karma have rules that sympathize with these people? Yes, to a certain extent. But just because you're genetically altered, doesn't mean that you can still be not pointed in the right direction for what you do. If you're gonna do bad things, do it for good reasons. That's
Mhm.
just my chaotic nature, but
So, this also gets into, so it gets into what all these issues around this forgiveness, responsibility, accountability, consequences, and I think it's the job of all parents to actually teach their children at a fairly young age some level of responsibility, accountability, follow through for what they did. I don't mean beating them or anything, but just consequences. And do you feel this is important also and will help create more sane, civil?
absolutely. One of my friends right now is having a trouble with their 25-year-old. You know, they just went to jail, and they ended up getting a psych evaluation and all this other, just a whole bunch of drama all the time. And it literally stems down to he got everything that he wanted. He pushed over his parents, showed him no respect, and they caved on him. They're just like, I don't want to deal with your attitude right now, so here, just take this and shut up. And now they're paying the price for it. They, you know,
I totally
a
agree.
parent can do everything that they can, and sometimes a child will not change. But that is also part of the community's problem as well, because The community helps forge and helps maintain what is socially acceptable. This goes down to forgiveness. This goes down to making sure everyone else is stepping in line. And I'm not talking about conformist people. I'm not talking about, oh, well, you got to be communist in order to do that. No, I'm talking about having a very wide open range of what is acceptable and what isn't, and being able to harmonically get together and live with each other. It doesn't matter what race, religion, sex, gender, like politics, anything. You can be respectful to each other and still be a functioning community. But it takes all of us to raise families. It takes all of us to raise a child, not just one person. And in America, everyone thinks that, oh, well, I'm a single parent, whether you're male or female or whatever you identify as, I have to do this alone. And that's not true because your single being is still part of a huge community.
Mhm.
So, but it still takes all of us to be like, that's socially unacceptable. You can't just, vomit on the floor and walk away.
Yeah.
Clean up after yourself, be responsible, go to the right people and say, hey, this happened. Or if you have the ability to clean it up yourself, do it yourself. That was a gross terminology. I apologize, but it's you make a mess, you learn to clean it up. Like, or you get, a ticket or something, or you get fined, or you never get to go back to that restaurant because you were disrespectful.
Mhm.
Now, are they going to forgive you? You threw up? Well, I mean, if you got issues, forgiveness is the thing, but you know.
I 100% agree. I find it's interesting that we seem to have a lot of extremes and everyone's kind of doing their best, but part of it is to be find yourself deprogrammed, learn to be authentic, right? So that takes a lot of work. That takes like therapy work, inner work. Have you had an experience with any assistance through therapy, inner work? What's been your path?
So, therapy I have had since, well, how do I put this? I've had therapy since I was about 5 years old. And, well, I mean, I got into the projects and, all this other stuff, and it affected my physical life here, and when psychologists and therapists can't explain how I'm interacting with these things and they check in on your home life and they're like, we have no idea what's going on, it can be difficult. So I felt very, obviously alienated and alone, and no one else was going through this, so uh now that I'm older and I know what's going on, and I am going to therapy specifically for certain things, uh, yeah, I see it does help a lot, but it also, you have to find the right support group for this stuff. You know, Going on the super soldier support groups is really comforting for me because, like, I might be on different, missions or had different things happen to me, but we're still in the same genre of having the same trauma. And just being able to talk to them and then, having that support group of sharing legitimately, don't lie about experiences you don't have. You have to be truthful. You have to have your trust in a support group. You have to be authentic in a support group. But, it, understanding other people's opinions, understanding other people's experiences, and respect. Respect is so important. Respecting what they chose to do and how they chose to cope with everything, how they chose to react to the situation, because we're all growing. We all make mistakes. We all, uh, you know, do what we can at that time and moment of trauma or need. Uh, Sometimes isn't the best decision, you know. Sometimes we didn't have time to analyze everything of what could be, and so but not being judgmental about it to them, about them during that, and having the forgiveness and giving them the understanding so that they can grow from the experience and change and learn that what they did might not have been the best move, but learning different options of what they could do next time it's just so important. On a daily basis for most people, lots of people go to therapy, lots of people go to a psychologist because, again, sometimes our ego gets into the way of being able to interact with our community properly because, sometimes we don't have the social skills, or sometimes we're doing selfish things and we don't really know about it until our community tells us that this is unacceptable. Like, why am I alone all the time? Obviously, there's something wrong with everyone else. Well, it could just be you. You
Right.
know, like what's happening in your
Uniquely
socials,
wired.
huh?
You're uniquely wired, it could be.
Right? But still, like, that's a social skill that is miscommunicating. So going to therapy and understanding why about yourself, is happening during that miscommunication can help because everyone's like, oh, well, you go to therapy to just complain about everything. Well, it actually kind of makes it better. Like, I hated therapy because I was just like, complaining about it isn't going to do anything. So if nothing can physically be done about it to make it better, why even waste someone else's time?
Mhm.
I don't want to be a burden, or I just find that it's stupid. But having a group or just a person reflect on your actions, because sometimes it's hard to get out of our own bubble to see ourselves from the outside of what are we actually doing in our community or interacting with this person or anyone else.
Mhm.
It helps to have that outside um, perspective.
And plus, right now, people are slowly remembering who they really are and learning who they really are.
And that's hard because your physical vessel's identity is going to be different than your soul's identity. We've talked about this in other previous videos, and it can be a very confusing time for a lot of people because they go into that, well, who really am I? Like, what am I? And a lot of people get lost, they get depressed, they get discouraged during this time. They start isolating themselves, which is normal, people. It's okay. It's okay to isolate yourself and figure out what you like and don't like again because you're learning about yourself again. But having that support group, not even just therapy, but like just a support group to help you be able to express yourself in a supportive, understanding, forgiving environment, because a lot of people get past life memories where they can just be terrible people, and they could be the nicest person on the planet right now, and they have issues dealing with it. When I found out, and I'm not the only one, I know I'm not, when I found out of all the stuff that I did, I was like, I don't even want to live with my existence right now. Like, what was I even thinking? So, like,
Mhm.
my intention started out pure, and then it just got corrupted like crazy, just like everything else, because I didn't have that support group. I didn't have those boundaries. I didn't have the community that I needed to not put me in line per se, but give me guidance through everything I was going through. And this is why I wanted to come out and talk about redemption, because out of all of the people on Earth and what, some of the species going on in space and everything, it's just we literally got the crappiest universe like to be put into, that is so unfair and so unforgiving, and it's only unforgiving because we're all making it that way. We all have the power to change it. We really do. So, but the first thing that we can do with all of our trauma is to learn to forgive ourselves and work through it and be there for each other, because I can guarantee you on this planet, maybe 0.2% of the population is a pure soul that has never had any trauma in their entire existence of consciousness, which means all of us have issues, but we can all be there for each other.
Mhm. Well, thank you for speaking from your heart and what you've been through, and because, again, part of the game of ascension that you were sharing with us and teaching us was to come to neutrality. So it's quite an art form to be dealing with people who are extremely dark or whatever, or naively extremely light in a certain way, and being fair and understanding where they came from. And, was this out of their own volition? Was it out of, it's incredibly complex, the legal issues we are dealing with behind closed doors, and which will become more public. So this is a advance notice for people to really review those issues of neutrality, breaking naivete, extreme judgment toward the dark, what level of compassion, right? All of those different things. And this takes us to also uh, incarceration, imprisonment, right? So I know that we were talking about this because you had some friends, right? That didn't you have some friends that were in prison or that had gotten into trouble?
Yes, unfortunately. But like just kind of like on a side note, and I'm completely neutral on this aspect, but like a lot of the dark forces, as I had mentioned beforehand, got thrown into this universe, and we talked about this in other shows that you and I have done. Some of these people who just lost everything. Think about like they got taken off of everything that they knew. Their entire universe just literally got thrown into another one. They have no family, they have no friends, they have no idea where they are, what they can do. Is the place even livable? You know, everything they've ever known got left behind in this one heartbeat of an instance. And some of these people who came over got met with hostility. They got met with distrust immediately. They weren't here to receive open arms, not all of them. And we're talking about some of these dark forces, you know. And they did what they had to do to survive, just like a lot of these people who are getting thrown on the streets. You know, our economy right now is absolutely terrible. And I have to say this myself, I've been homeless too. Being in jail gives you 3 square meals a day, gives you a roof over your head so you're not freezing on the streets, especially during wintertime, you know, and it gives you medical. And it sucks, you know, it absolutely sucks. And you have to do something wrong in order to get in there to get help. You know, so a lot of these people did what they had to do. A lot of these dark forces did what they had to do to survive. It wasn't so much them being like, oh, well, if I go over and stab this person, then, you know, I can totally get away with it. Oh, hey, that felt really good. Not all of these dark forces were like that, especially at the beginning. You know, they did what they had to do to survive. And unfortunately, it has escalated to the point where they are what everyone sees them to be now because of tradition, because of, you know, this is the way that things have to be in order to stay strong and survive in this universe. And it doesn't have to be that way. You know, they
Totally.
could choose another path because a lot of the other species, you know, were part of the problem of why they got to be that way in the first place, you know, just because they didn't like their culture, or they didn't like the way that they looked or the way that they smelt or whatever. I've seen some of the archives on why the Galactic War started, and it was so ridiculous to me. I'm like, why did this even happen? This is so childish, you
Mhm.
know? So the same principle is still kind of applying to them on why they turned to these darker things and why they got stuck in it. It just sucked them in because it gave them power, and they just kind of continued to run with it, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse.
I agree with that. I think they figured might makes right. And this, on a third dimension, it was like they're part of the game here, as I understand it more deeply and deeply and deeply, is to create the most resilient souls also. And the resilient and strong souls as well as bodies. And so I can see how it can easily go over into where um, I'm an honorable person, and I know that many of these beings that are very powerful consider that doing certain things is honor, but I really am asking them publicly to reevaluate for themselves, not just because their culture has been tradition that way for eons of time, but honor is not just brute force. It's not the willingness to just die in the name of, some honor. It's not killing because life is sacred. Honor is doing, not acting out of reaction or programming. And they're as programmed as the people I meet every day on the streets. And so this is a whole reevaluating. And the one thing happens that if you don't shift your programming and your ancestral patterns that were dysfunctional, you don't grow.
Exactly.
Would you agree with that?
No, I completely agree with that. So for me, for tradition, in the Dark Draco traditions, because I did go over there and learn about some of their stuff because I wanted to play neutral. I wanted to know why the war between them and the Sierrians happened. Like, what happened? Why is this huge war happening between these two? And I got to read both of their archives, and it was just the stupidest thing. The Dark Dracos came over here. A lot of them were mistreated, you know. And again, it's that whole, oh, well, don't get me wrong, the Dracos have a normal cultural thing of where they think they're better than everybody else.
Arrogance,
But
yeah.
honor, true honor, would make it to where you can still have that ego to a safe extent because they did come from a higher dimension than the universe here, okay? Like they came from a higher universe. And that pertains a little bit of ego because they can do more things. Their energy work is a lot better, their energy manipulation, their science, everything, which knowledge boosts ego a bit, but their culture was still very somewhat mindful about ego, but when they came over here and they realized they didn't have to really obtain to that because they're away from their culture, they're away from their society, the
The
small group
controls.
of yeah,
Mhm.
the small group over here is away from their society. They're like, oh wait, I have the freedom to do whatever. The light came on in the wrong direction. So when they got over here, they started to basically just, survive out of necessity. But their egos got completely unchecked. So their honor started to slip from their normal honor in their society
There you go.
to becoming more egotistical
Yes.
for their honor,
And
to where,
stubborn too.
yeah, so
Some stubborn.
from their original universe where they were a lot more um refined, I would say, more neutral about their ego of being like, okay, so let me give you an example. A neutral ego of, how do I put this? Um,
For a draconian.
a neutral ego,
Possible.
a neutral ego of honor for a draconian of a higher universe is usually, okay, well, I'm going to hear this person out. I might not agree with it, but they are capable of doing whatever their species can do. You find the highlights in that, whether it be intelligence, whether it be strength, whether it be tactics, whether it be, so any of that. And then you honor their strength is basically what you do. Now, the ones here have evolved into I'm going to totally test your merit by kicking your butt, or to see if you can kick my butt, and then I'm going to judge you on it. And a lot of reptilian species are like this because you can learn so much about a person during a fight because it is literally not just a dance of death. It is a dance of how refined are you disciplined in honing your skill? How passionate are you in honing your skill? Um, how much do you value another person's life? Because you don't know as soon as you take both of those blades if that person's gonna kill you and show no mercy. Because obviously, if they do that, they do not value you at all. They don't value your skill or anything. They're just bloodthirsty. Um, or are they going to test your merit by toying with you and seeing what kind of passion you have or intelligence you have with during that fight and spare them, because when you spare a person, you're not telling them they're pathetic exactly. This is a neutral ego draconian. You're not telling them that they're pathetic. You're telling them that they have room to grow, that they still have room to improve on themselves, their skill level, everything. Now, a lower ego draconian who is very toxic is going to be bloodthirsty. They're not going to test you at all. They're just going to kill you if they have no honor, like actual honor. Um,
Mhm.
they're just going to do what they just see you as prey and that's it. You know, a higher level one in this universe that is from that same lineage is going to test your merit. They might rough you up a lot, but they won't kill you if you prove to be a good enough fighter and you actually understand the small cues of fighting them. So it goes from how you present yourself in combat is how they're going to take you. If you go in trying to kill that person, they're just going to kill you because you don't understand the game. You don't understand the society, or the rules of honor bound. So
Mhm.
those are just a
Well,
few
and
things.
that's lawyer honor bound, which is different than your person in the street honor bound.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, you're basically describing, are you at street thug mentality or are you at martial arts respect?
Yeah, that's a really good
Martial
way of
art or
putting that.
respect. It's a whole different level, right? Which is
Yes,
why bullies were often bullied themselves and why we don't allow that, you know.
right.
So,
Because it creates dishonor.
yeah.
Being bullied and bullying other people, it creates a dishonor. You're showing someone complete disrespect. You're not showing them honor of respect.
Well, I think there's a programming too early on by whichever beings, who knows. But again, it loves to polarize into two choices when there's many shades of gray in between, and it's like you're either predator or prey. The whole Darwin, the whole, evolution. Who the strong survive. So a lot of them got really programmed in that primitive way.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the dominant one, we're the strongest, we have the right to control everything rather than the respect for all life, which is a different attitude.
Right. And this goes to the kind of getting off subject a little bit, but this goes to the two different leaders. You lead by fear or you lead by compassion and understanding.
Which you did on the planet that we talked about in the last shows. Those that listen to our show, I hope, are pretty much moving into at least co-creator or creator consciousness, and to realize the impact that once you claim that you have on affecting the hologram and what goes on. So we will be in a position where we will be seeing many people in court. There'll be a lot of things brought forward, and we need to go inside and determine what level of authenticity, what level of reality, what level of forgiveness. So I looked up some interesting facts here. And one of those was that the studies done that people incarcerated in US prisons are actually innocent. So if 5% of individuals are actually innocent, that means 1 out of 20 criminal cases have a wrongful conviction.
My friend went to jail for a year and a half before they got out, and he was literally protecting uh two kids and a woman against his like psychopathic girlfriend who was on drugs.
Yeah.
They had like broken up and she wouldn't leave and, just all of this stuff. Unfortunately, he put himself into that position. And, you know,
Yeah.
because of laws where I live, he couldn't get out of that position. And so the laws actually led up to him going to jail, even though he was protecting somebody else. So it's very tricky. Um,
It is. And on the other hand, you also have, shall we say, corruption, where the innocents like will get put in there or whatever else. I'd like to share because I took the time to get a couple of examples of people who volunteered, what it was like and what they actually needed in prison. This is a way of educating us outside of prison, how we can be more supportive to others and realizing that 1 out of 20 are in there. And so I know you mentioned, Apollymi, all good things like support and honesty and self-inquiry and therapy and authenticity and all of those things. This is a woman named Dawn Ozelman who was in prison said, uh, when asked, because we're talking about reformation, right? And it's about what do people need to reform?
yeah,
Like, hello, reforming. The entire world is reforming because all the old structures are going down so that you see how dysfunctional, and we are reforming. So, even though this may not seem pertinent to you, like, oh, people in prison, everything's pertinent to you because ultimately we are connected. Okay. So, a woman named Dawn said, quote, I will tell you how you can comfort a loved one in prison. Write, visit, put money in their commissary account. Practical. Those are the three most important things to them. Knowing they are loved, not forgotten, missed, so they know they have something to live for, to come back to. And commissary improves their quality of life greatly. They can buy alternate food items, skin lotion, and chapstick, other simple daily items that make all the difference in the world. Another guy, James Downey, spent 4 years in prison, and this is the advice he offered. For me, the hardest thing was trying to readjust to my new situation. Before I was locked up, I lived very well. I owned my own business for 20 years and very content. I lost everything, including my woman, business, cars, motorcycles, and everything else that I worked my butt off for in life. I almost lost my home, but just got out in time from prison to work it out with the bank. I had no power, water, or gas as I was living at quote home. I was released on Thanksgiving, and for 3 months, I only used every dollar to keep the roof over my head. I worked with friends and did whatever I had to pay my mortgage. It was cold every night. I was hungry. I lost 55 pounds, and thank God for my neighbors who would give me water to clean up. I almost wanted to go back to jail, prison, and let the state handle it, but I couldn't let the corrupt system turn me into a statistic. The hardest part is starting all over from scratch. I had no support system whatsoever. It's been almost 2 years since I've been home and I'm doing well. If I had just a little bit of help, that would have been great. So if you have a loved one coming home, he or she will need you to understand that things are going to be hard, but make sure this person knows you have their back and make sure they're going the extra mile to get employment and make all appointments with a parole officer, stay off drugs, etc., etc. There is no excuse to fail if you feel some support. I know we have the most corrupt judicial system in the world, so it's going to be hard, but they will make it if they really want to. As far as giving support to a loved one, write letters, send books, plenty of pictures, visit when possible. If your finances are in place, send care packages, money or books, and let them know if you don't have money or packages in a calm way. It's hard enough inside. Last thing we want to do is fight with our loved ones and just listen to them while talking. You will hear one thing, and it really is something else they are asking for. They will blow up sometimes because the system turns you cold, but you know who they really are. Don't give up on them. That is the worst feeling ever, especially if they just disappear one day without a word. To be abandoned in prison is the worst feeling ever and really hard to keep the prying eyes from getting at you during a weak point in your life. Support, support, support is all I can say. And one last one here. Question: how can we outside contribute to higher success of labeled criminals? Using discernment, but not prejudice. So many prisoners, as you said, put themselves back into prison because it is a known factor, even though it's horrendous. At least they have a home and food. So, to understand why this occurs, Chris Scroggins, Department of Criminal Justice in Texas, said, quote, the shock of realizing the world has moved on. This is if you've been in for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. The shock of realizing the world has moved on without you. Everyone has moved on. Everything has changed, yet has all remained the same. In prison, it feels like the world is frozen. You have to remember it didn't wait on you. Your family and friends had to get on with their lives. Everyone expects you to instantly adapt, to start working immediately, to hit the ground running. You need time to adjust. You're in post traumatic stress. Allow yourself to take things slow. I didn't begin working for 6 months. I had a panic attack the first time I walked into a grocery store. Take things slow. Lost all relationships. You're going to lose friends, family. Don't reach out right away. Wait until they're ready to connect. Sometimes just let them reach out to you. The temptation to use drugs or party or get wasted. Hey, you did your time. But no, that's the quickest way back to prison, so take it slow. When asking the prisoners what is the hardest obstacle to overcome after being released from prison, McTatum wrote, well, if you've done a lot of time like I have, the greatest obstacle to overcome will be to find a regular good paying job, like you said, Apollymi. America gives lip service to prison reform and rehabilitation programs, but the reality is they do nothing to encourage it on a national level. After 7.5 years free with no violations or new charges, I can't even get one person to call me back. It's shameful, and I know if it wasn't for my family being there for me like they've been, I would have done something to get myself back to prison. Mostly because of the quote scarlet letter, an old term, on me, and because no one is willing to give a guy who has prison a chance. They make all kinds of assumptions. Once I told them I did 29 years, they just automatically assumed I was a killer and wondered how many people I'd killed. Never killed anyone, by the way, or anything, maybe an ant or two. Anyway, getting a legit good paying job is the hardest thing once you get out there. The readjustment comes when you finally realize it's not going to happen and begin to focus and refocus and shift your ideas, efforts, and energy towards self creative entrepreneurial ventures. So, what do you think about that, Apollymi? Do you relate to all that?
I I can definitely relate to a lot of it. Just to let people know, I've never been in jail, like physically. I don't even have like a jaywalking ticket. I have been homeless several times, not due to my own stuff. Like I went to college and you get kicked out, and I don't have family, so I had to learn how to survive on my own, but it gets hard. It gets really hard because when you're in a place that, doesn't have homeless support or, and it's hard for me to get a job because I'm targeted as a super soldier. It can be very difficult, but I've never stolen, I've never hoarded myself out, I've never killed anybody or done anything wrong because even though I have had so much bad stuff happen to me, like the universe does provide for me. I just have to be smart about my resources. I take advantage as much as, the programs will allow me to for the programs that each state gives out for either the homeless or job like searching or anything like that. The programs are out there. I believe that people need to be a lot more aware of them. They do help. I've been homeless many times, and it's because of those programs. And I'm not talking about like the subsidized housing or the like Section 8 housing. I have been on those programs for 5, 6 years and I still haven't gotten anything. But the short-term programs of, house relocation and, the YMCA and stuff like that, they're really, really nice. Some of the homeless shelters have a lot of programs you can walk in and they'll literally go through a lot of them with you. Our country right now is really bad with them, but it's better than nothing.
Mhm.
So I'm not gonna get into those politics, but
Yeah.
uh, but it's very important for our community to understand that just you have to understand that when someone goes to jail, they've done their time. They've done their crime, they've done their time. It's time for forgiveness and it's time for understanding because they had the time to think about what they did. They got out because they're psychologically okay to now. Usually, okay, this isn't always the extent, but usually, just because someone has a record doesn't mean they're not wrongfully accused to get in there in the first place. And even if they've done something bad, you know, if they don't have a chance from society of being accepted back into society, you're going to be part of the problem of making a criminal all over again. And next time it just might bite you in the butt because we all exist with each other. You know, a lot of these people become criminals because they have hard upbringings. They have no other way to feed themselves or their families. Living on the street is hard. Even if you're in Florida or whatnot, necessities, your essentials, your ability to bathe and brush your teeth and your ability to get, health insurance and stuff and have that comfort and safety, the feeling of safety that you have some place to go to that is continuous and that is loving is stripped from you
Mhm.
constantly, before you even go to jail. And it's very, very difficult and it can be solved with, you know, allowing your community to know that you can be understanding. I'm not saying you have to fully 100% trust someone who's been in jail. They got there for a reason, but they've done their time, and now it's time to give them chances to redeem themselves.
Well,
Because if you're not giving them the ability to, then it just shows distrust. They're going to continuously think, like, what was the point of me even getting out of jail if I'm just going to be isolated and, not given a chance?
right. And I know in our previous discussion, when I asked you what makes for you or what do you feel makes a safe environment, you said first my favorite thing, which is rules and boundaries.
Mhm.
Let him know what's the non-negotiable, right?
Mhm.
And then acceptance, as you said,
Right. Well,
trust.
let's go through each one and explain,
Okay. So
like,
rules and boundaries. Explain.
right. So rules and boundaries would apply that when you get out of jail or you get out of trouble, it doesn't even have to apply to people in jail. This could be you messing up at work and getting fired. It could be, you messing up in a relationship and breaking up with somebody or having a fallout with a family member. We all do things that have consequences. And the thing is that first and foremost thing is that we need to realize that we messed up. All right, let your ego go aside. You need to self-evaluate and figure out what the hell's going on. Was it something I did? Was it something they did? Was it on both parties' faults? You know, could it have been avoided? What action should I have taken during that time to avoid this situation? And if there couldn't have been some agreements, have respect for each other that it just couldn't have been agreed upon and things didn't have to escalate the way that they did. You know what I mean? So boundaries are very important for, and rules are important for communication. All right, how do I communicate with this person specifically? How do I communicate? What is the rules and boundaries that I need to be communicating or addressing when I'm outside of the house, when I'm inside the house with my family or friends, at my workplace? Because we all know each one of those is completely different. Nobody acts at work like they do outside of work or at home. Everyone puts on that mask of a robot and having to pretend to be nice to everyone, or maybe you like your job even,
Hmm.
So there are certain rules and boundaries of how we can interact with people, and those are there to make the environment safe. They're there to make the environment comfortable for everybody on a neutral level,
Hmm.
So it's important for us to actually learn how to abide by those rules, because if we want people to interact with us, then we have to basically obey them or follow them.
Mhm.
I know it's conformist, but you know what? It's sometimes it's there for
Least
a
on
reason.
their turf.
What?
At least on their turf.
At least on their turf, exactly. In your own home, you're gonna make the rules and do whatever you want. This is why, huh?
I said, you betcha, honey.
This is why it's important to get a job and move out of your parents' house. Ah.
Okay, so the rules, boundaries, acceptance, which you talked about.
Right. So acceptance is accepting the fact that the rules need to be abided by because they're there for everyone's safety. They're there for everyone to interact in a comfortable environment to make things not escalate or become awkward or just be unacceptable socially. But also acceptance is accepting other people's differences, accepting other people make mistakes, you know, and giving other people chances to be able to show that they're changing, to that they're growing. It gives them the opportunity to grow for acceptance, but they have to want it. The people who make mistakes have to want to change. They need to have that self-reflection. They need to understand that, oh, if I want people to interact with me in a good way, in a good environment that doesn't require me feeling isolated or doesn't require me feeling like I don't belong or that I just don't fit in, they need to understand acceptance of themselves that it might be something that they're doing.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm communicating wrong, or maybe I'm saying things I shouldn't be, like lying about experiences just to feel socially accepted, or to not be myself and try to be something that I'm not, which can get you also into trouble, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
And then the community needs to accept that the person might be different, or they might have different viewpoints, or that they did something wrong, and it could be something terrible, but if they're not given a chance to change and grow and prove that they've learned their lesson, so that they don't fall back into the crime again, or they don't fall back into a different one, to survive and become a bad person to survive, then there's that. It's just important to have acceptance with boundaries, of course. You
Yeah.
don't have to come in and be like, "Oh, you poor thing," and just give the person respect. Give them a handshake, been like, "Welcome back to the community." You know, I'm we're going to give you a chance. We're going to try and support you. Here's the help that you need. These are the places that you need to go to, the help that you need. We're going to, trust has to and respect has to be earned to a point. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like you don't have to put that person on a pedestal. You don't have to pity them. You don't have to, just cry over their shoulder for whatever they did wrong, or, like just have that respect of they are an entity of consciousness, they are a being of existence, they deserve to have the baseline respect, which means don't judge them because you have no idea what happened. You were never there. Just take it that hopefully they have learned their lesson. Keep your eye on them if you feel like you need to, but don't sit there and be like, I'm not going to hire you, or you can't live here, or oh, you messed up. I can't trust you ever, ever again.
Mhm.
Whether it be a breakup, whether it be, a falling out at your job, whether it be, you know, falling out with your family member or going to jail. These are all steps that have to go into redemption of ourselves, redemption of other people, you know, having that it's having what's the word you keep using? Responsibility for
Uh,
yourself,
accountability.
accountability. Because having an accountability of taking control of your environment and how people act in a social situation, in a structural situation on a higher conscious level of having all of us is still every single person who is alive right now's responsibility.
Yep. And as us all. That's so well said. And I think one of the biggest issues on this planet that I've observed is clean, clear communication. So if you're
Absolutely.
talking to someone, and it's amazing how people are so scared of that. But if you're talking to someone, I don't care if it's a wild animal, I don't care if it's a person out of prison, I don't care if it's a guy.
Like verily, you're calling me out here as a wild animal.
I I like say someone you were going to say, okay, I'll have him clean the garden for me and see how he does, right? So it's okay to say, want to give you this chance. This is what I'll pay you, and these are my conditions. Now, is that you're on time and you are thorough? And is there any difficulty you're going to have doing either one? Right?
Exactly.
And they'll go, oh, well, I have to take 6 buses or this or that or whatever. So you clear that out, right? See, they're not setting up sabotages. And then you're going, okay, great. Well, then I expect that to be done. And that is your word. Are we clear? And I always say, are we clear? And they go, clear. And I hardly ever have any trouble. Hard,
Right?
part of it is people don't put fairness out of what they want and what they expect. They just assume, then make all kinds of value judgments, even between species, right? Like we learn all the time, like, oh my God, I had a wild experience I'm not going to get into that just by saying someone was cute in their species, they assumed I was now their literally mate. So that was a shocker. And
You have to be careful flirting with other species.
well,
Someone
I
will take
wasn't
it
even,
way too
I
literally.
wasn't even flirting. I was just, no, trust me, I wasn't flirting. I was just like, oh, you're so cute. But hello. So there's a lot. You have to like, okay, no,
The
no.
weirdest way to get married.
You know? Anyway, that's it. I mean, clear communication, always, always, always. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and the things that are vulnerable to your heart and what you've learned from your vast experience, both on Earth, uh, not being fully supported, and off world with the challenges and being successful, persevering. And I still see you as a very important leader for now and in the future. So it is an honor for me, and that so we both would like to end with the most spiritual uplifting reminder guidelines that I have found for myself, and many of you have probably already heard about, that come from attitudinal healing centers that are in over 30 countries around the world and have 100 centers done by my clients, late Dr. Jerry Jampolsky and his wonderful co-partner, Diane Chericiani. They were the creators of this, and it's very effective. Now, one of my clients, Rebecca, offered this advice to me for the show because she's boots on the ground as a co-facilitator using attitudinal healing group dynamics in a prison next to where I live called San Quentin Prison in California. So she uses these rules, and she sent me 2 pages of which I'm going to put on screen, and you can screenshot them. And I've been applying the attitudinal healing rules as good reminders. It doesn't matter how great you think you are, they're incredible reminders. There's 12, they would be more called guidelines rather than rules. So what Rebecca shared with me is she said, quote, it is important when talking to inmates that they feel safe and have a safe space to share. The agreement is for them to set down their personas. This is really important. And roles that they need to survive in the prison or society for the period of time that they are in this group sharing together. And they do say they feel very safe and they have agreed to that commitment when sharing with one another. Now, Rebecca is a very loving spiritual being, and she shares that it is their job. She emphasizes this at the beginning. It is all of your job to listen and suspend judgment. We recognize that love is listening, and we agree to this. And she makes sure everyone agrees to this. And she sees it as her job to reflect. This is the most important gift you can give anyone, is to reflect the true essence of that person back to themselves. Because most have never had any positive reflection or trust shown to them. And we all are here as part of one, serving as reflections of each other. And in this earth experiment, we need reminded all the time. Now, the inmates do say, and what was interesting, it was the exact words that Apollymi had told me before, too. The inmates literally say, quote, "We need to be seen as human beings and not treated as animals. If you treat us like animals, we act like animals." So, reflecting back someone's essence, and my favorite thing to do when I work with others is to see who they actually are and then back engineer it from there and see if they're still interesting in playing this game. Because this is the time that most of us are awakening to more of the truth of who we really are, because it's toward the end, not the end of time or anything, but it's toward the end of this huge, magnificent game. So I also have been in prison, been in prisons interviewing super soldiers and multiple visits. So I'm very aware what goes on there, and it's extremely corrupt, as well as many of the guards. And so this is part of us reforming, reformation, and forgiveness. So here I'm going to put on screen the two guidelines. The first one is Rebecca transitioned some of the principles into 10 guidelines for developing a positive attitude, which who can't use that, right? So I'm going to go through these really quick before we end the show. And the first one is the goal of the group is to develop character, integrity, and have a more positive lifestyle. 2, in the group, we recognize that love is listening, and we agree to listen with an open heart, to give mutual support, and to practice non-judgmental listening and sharing. 3, we are all here to heal ourselves. We are not here to assume giving advice is appropriate or to change anyone's beliefs or behavior. Being accepted as we are, especially at first, makes it easier for us to accept others. And I know that you were the first I ever heard of. The name of this game is neutrality, being able to be neutral, hold that neutrality. 4, we all share from our own experience. By risking and exposing our emotional state in a safe environment that's been agreed upon, we find common experience that allows for joining. And this is so true. It's like all religions have almost the same tenets in different words. It's an example of that. 5, we respect each other as unique. We recognize that each person's process is important, not our judgment of it. It's not our judgment that's important. It's their process and what they're learning from it. 6, we support each other's inner guidance and encourage them to listen to their inner guidance and assist one another in finding our own best answers to the questions we have. 7, the roles of student and teacher are interchangeable. They fluctuate fluidly from one to the other, regardless of age or experience. 8, we practice being present with others, seeing only the light and not the lampshade, which I thought was a cute way of saying it. 9, we'd agree to keep in mind that we always have a choice between peace and conflict, between love and fear. And 10th is we recognize the confidentiality of what we share in the group, honoring that this confidentiality and safety is important for maintaining the group and ensuring a place of safety and trust. So before I go to the last little chart, would you agree with all of that?
Yes.
Okay.
I just have one question.
Yes.
What do they mean by the lampshade?
Oh, you're so cute. The lampshade is what casts a shadow.
Oh,
It blocks out the light,
oh,
but
okay.
it doesn't always block it out. It can dim it. Let's do an appropriate thing. It can block it because the light bulb's right there, and if you just have the light bulb right here, it's really bright. So the lampshade, right? So seeing only the light and not necessarily the lampshade, meaning the darkness, the obfuscation, the distractions, the persona, all that stuff that is covering the light is another.
Oh,
That's another way of looking at it as a metaphor. Yeah.
that makes more sense.
Okay. I'm glad you asked. So, folks, these are the 12 principles of attitudinal healing. We're putting them up for you now. There might have been one word or two that she shifted for the purposes of her working with the inmates who we hope are soon to be outmates. So,
This isn't me. This is the one lady. Who's she again?
yes. Well, this is attitudinal healing. So
Okay.
this is Dr. Jerry Jampolsky, exactly, and Diane who put this together and have all those very, very effective.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so one, a basic truth in developing a positive attitude is that the essence of our being is love. Period. Two, health is inner peace. Healing is letting go of fear. Three, giving and receiving are the same. This is really hard for people. I work with him all the time on this. We are one being, and people don't feel worthy. They don't receive gracefully. And then if they do receive, they think they have to give something back, all this weird stuff around it. So giving and receive, yeah, exactly. And very few things are given cleanly. That's the other thing. So that's your job to make sure that doesn't happen and you don't fall prey to that kind of manipulation. So giving and receiving are the same. There should be no guilt, no trips going on. 4, we can let go of the past and of the future. 5, now is the only time there is, and each day we work on developing and maintaining a moral and ethical character. 6, we can learn to love others and ourselves by forgiving rather than judging. I need that one. I'm reminded. 7, we can become love finders rather than fault finders. And that's really beautiful because as creators, what you focus on is what you create in your reality.
And attract. And attract.
Exactly. So, I was trained like, it's almost like having spy training. With spy training is like, look for the weak links, look for the this, look for that. And then it's like, look for the love, look for the balance, look for the true essence of who they are. We can become love finders rather than fault finders. And 8, we can choose and direct ourselves to be peaceful inside, regardless of what is happening outside. And the best way to do that, folks, is what Eckhart Tolle said. The thing that causes suffering is you repeating the same stories over and over again and thinking they're real, so you keep recreating it. It's not the actual event, it's the stories about it that create the suffering.
So when the suffering happens, digest it, understand it, and move on.
There you go.
I'm still, I was a master at that when I was a kid, not so much anymore.
Yeah. Well, most of our brain, we go into the rationalization and all these mind thoughts and we give it credit. And you just have to go, stop. You're not real, and you realign yourself, right? That's what I do because I'm bossy. But anyway, 9, we are students and teachers to each other. True. 10, we can focus on the whole of life, not only the fragments. So keep seeing holistic, keep seeing others as an aspect of you in the greater picture. So holistic health rather than like all these fragments, okay? Because fragments can create separation. 11, since love is eternal, death not be viewed as fearful. And we know that death isn't really real in most situations, almost all situations that most humans know about. So, you know, we can guarantee you it's hard to kill yourself, truly. Okay, so except, oh, Apollymi, you're not allowed to talk on this one. Okay, so, and 12, we can always perceive others as either, this is my favorite, we can always perceive others as either extending love or giving a call for help. A bully is actually giving a call for help. An angry person usually has hidden anger. I mean, has hidden fear. It's a weird call for help, but it's a call for help. And to learn to not take things personally. So, those are the 12 we'll put up for you. So please use those pages for reminders as you would like. And with a quote from the Dalai Lama, we can let the circumstances of our lives harden us so that we become increasingly resentful and afraid. Or we can let them soften us and make us kinder and more aware. You always have the choice. So, Apollymi, do you have any last thing you would like to share? And because I know we've gone close to 2 hours, and I believe that you're still not available to be contacted. So if anyone wants to contact Apollymi or more, if anyone has a question they would like Apollymi to answer, please send that to me, merely at cosmicbrilliance.com, and I will make sure and include that in future shows. I'm usually really good about that.
Basically, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you've done. All of us deserve forgiveness and the ability to grow and change into a better version of us, but we have to want it. You can't just expect people to give you trust and give you second chances if you don't push yourself or believe in yourself that you can change. And change doesn't have to happen alone. So it's okay to reach out and get the help you need.
There's no shame in asking for support.
No.
Yes. So, folks, thank you so much, Apollymi. Your time is extremely valuable, and you spoke from your heart today and about things that you have experienced and have seen involved with close friends of yours. And we really appreciate that because we will be seeing a lot of this coming out publicly at the time the show gets published, which is in beginning of January 2025. And may we all be blessed by waking up to the truth of our being, holding balanced justice, and listening and feeling into what we know is right in our own hearts and souls. So, blessings to all of you, and onwards and upwards, we are going to do this together. Thank you, Apollymi.
Of course. Till next time.